All right. Ryan Wilson, Rick Spielman, still in Indianapolis with the First Pick podcast here on CBS Sports HQ. With First Pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft podcast. As I mentioned, I'm Ryan Wilson. This is our general manager, Rick Spielman. More than 30 years of NFL experience, a decade as the Vikings general manager. Today, Rick, we're going to talk a little stock up, stock down with the defensive backs who just worked out down the hall there at the Lucas Oil Stadium. And then later, we're going to have our quarterback, in addition to our GM, join us here, Danny Cannell. We're going to preview the quarterbacks who are going to be working out tomorrow, and that's going to be a hot topic of conversation, no doubt. Remember, Rick, because I know you're a big YouTube guy, you can find us on YouTube at NFL on CBS or wherever you get your podcasts. You can get us there, the audio version, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Oh, and more good news. Producer Debo reminds me. The show is now going to 3 times a week, Rick. Yeah. We are running you into the ground. So we're going to do Monday. We're going to do Wednesdays and Thursdays going forward up until the draft. So look for that. It is going to be exciting. So I know you're pumped. Rick, we had a whole day of talking to the quarterbacks here, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But let's talk about the defensive backs, many of whom we saw in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, and some guys that did really well and some guys that probably wish they did a little better. And we'll start with your list. And the first guy that did really well, who do we have here? We have, you want to start with Christian Gonzalez?
Christian Gonzalez.
Let's start with Christian Gonzalez.
I love this kid. When I watched the tape on him, he was a transfer from Colorado, went out to Oregon. The biggest question mark on him when you broke down the film in Colorado was, does he have any ball skills? He ended up, I believe, having 4 interceptions this year.
And he's the cornerback, just so we're clear.
And he's the corner.
Right? Yep.
Yeah. And then he goes out there. He was 6'1", almost 200 pounds, 197. He goes and runs a 4.44, and his fastest time was a 4.38. He's a smooth, big, good-looking athlete. And there's a bunch of corners in this draft, and they're all clustered together like we talk about, maybe 5 or 6, and I think this kid really helped himself in becoming maybe the number 1 cornerback off the board this draft coming up.
And that's exactly what I was about to ask you, because Joey Porter Jr., we're not going to talk about him this segment. He was my cornerback 1 coming into the draft. During the telecast, they were actually speaking to Joey Porter Sr. as he watched his son run, which was a unique perspective. And Joey Porter Jr. ran in the low 4.4s, high 4.5s, and he wasn't happy about it. Does that change your opinion as an evaluator when it comes to what Christian Gonzalez did?
No. You're going to go back and you're going to have your meetings, and you're going to go back and watch all this tape again. Now you're going to add the numbers that you have into it. So it'll be interesting to see if Porter Jr. or if Gonzalez comes off the board in this year's draft first.
Okay, I'm going to go with DJ Turner, who is a guy that we haven't talked a lot about because he wasn't in the first-round conversation. I don't think anything's changed, but my man ran a 4.26 40, and it doesn't matter what you were thinking of him. Tariq Woolen came here last year as a converted wide receiver early on in his career in college, ran in the 4.2s, and I'm sure people set up and took notice. Ended up going on day 3, probably should have gone on day 2, worst case. DJ Turner is a smaller cornerback. He weighed, what do you see? He weighed 178, 5'11", so he's not as big as you might want. But what does the 4.26 say to you? Because I think he's catapulted himself into day 2.
Yeah, and it confirmed what you've seen on tape. He's not technically sound in everything he does, but when he gets vertically stretched down the field, he did a couple times in the tapes I watched, will bite on a double move. Yeah. But you can see that catch-up speed on tape, and it just was confirmed when he ran that 4.26 tonight.
The 178 weight, does that concern you at all?
A little bit, but my next winner is going to be concerned weight-wise. But I love this kid.
Emmanuel Forbes.
That's a tease.
Yeah, it's a great tease. You've been in the business for 3, 4, 5 months.
5 months.
So Emmanuel Forbes, you saw him live in person, correct?
Yeah, I did. I saw him live against Alabama this fall.
And you're not very active on social media, but you made a point to note back in the fall that Emmanuel Forbes is a guy to keep an eye on for the reasons you're about to talk about. And let me tell you quickly, 4.35 unofficial, 6 feet, but he's only 166.
6 feet 166.
Sorry, that's right.
So he puts him over 6 feet. He has 32-inch arm length, which is critical. And when I watched him on tape, I thought he had the best ball skills out of anyone I watched of the corners this year. And I know he's skinny, but he has excellent speed, excellent quickness. You can see how he turns his hips there.
What about those legs? Sorry to interrupt you. How skinny are his legs, though?
Well, it doesn't matter. If he can cover a receiver,
okay.
You're not going to ask him to get there in a 3 technique and start to take on double teams.
Okay,
this guy's going to be an outside corner. You cover that cat, and that cat will not catch the ball. And you know what he reminded me of a little bit? His ball skills reminded me a little bit of Diggs when he came out of Alabama.
Trevon, Stephon's brother.
Yes, and then the other guy that he kind of reminded me of when I was back in Miami in the early 2000s, there was a skinny corner that ended up going to the Pro Bowl, and his name was Sam Madison, who came out of Louisville.
Very good player, no doubt about it. I want to turn to our guy, and just quickly, Emmanuel Forbes has gotten some first-round buzz in the media. Where do you see him as a top 50 guy? Is he higher than that?
Definitely an early Friday guy.
Gotcha.
I think he's going to go in the second round. Now, what's going to knock him down is 166 pounds, but he has everything you want in a corner except the weight.
And to your point, you don't play in shorts, so it doesn't matter what his legs look like if he's covering like you want him to cover people. My guy, we talked about this in Mobile. We talked about it in the weeks in between. Darius Rush, the cornerback out of South Carolina. The conversation for most of the fall was Cam Smith, his teammate on the opposite side, who has a chance to be a first-round pick. Darius Rush, I watched him before the Senior Bowl. I had a day 3 grade on him. I watched him ball out in the one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl, which is incredibly important. I moved him up to early day 3, and this guy just keeps making plays. You talked to me about him, about how he's a great teammate. The coaches loved him down in South Carolina. That's incredibly important. Also important, Rick, he ran a 4.37 unofficial. He's 6'2". He's 198. His arms are 33 3/8 inches. Tell me what's wrong with this young man.
Well, there's nothing wrong with him now. Like, everybody went down to South Carolina. You're looking at Cam Smith because he's supposed to be a first-round talent. So he got overlooked a little bit. But this kid is one of those kids that keep ascending through this process. He's a smooth, athletic kid. I thought he was a little stiff when I watched tape. Now, when you watch him turn here, what you watch is when they come down that hash, when they turn their hips, do they come off that line?
Yeah.
And he was a lot smoother than I anticipated. You can see him get off the line
That
there.
looks pretty good.
Yeah, but when you go up, watch him go up and get the ball. He has excellent hands. He showed that down at the Senior Bowl, and then he goes and blows out the combine with these numbers. He is definitely a day 2 corner and has really been climbing through this whole process.
Yeah, he's been a fun story, and I think he feels like a top 75 guy, and I don't feel too bad about saying that, or is that too much?
No, because the way some of these corners ran today,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if 10 or 12 of these guys go by the end of the second round.
So let's go to your next guy, and we talked to him on the set here yesterday. Deontay Banks, you may know him from the program guide, and he was a little quirky, and he was a good young man, and his answers were short, and maybe he was nervous. He had confidence, but it just felt like some of his answers were a little quirky, I think is the word. Not in a bad way, but you don't care. Like, none of that matters. And you said at the time, I don't care about. He's fine. There's nothing to be concerned about.
No, and as we did talk with him, he got more comfortable on TV. And, maybe the first time he's had interviews like that.
That's true.
So,
and when you told him that I said he ran a 4.75, he seemed to warm up to you really quickly. So it turns out he didn't run a 4.75. He did a little better than that. 4.35, 42-inch vertical. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, and he's another 6-foot corner, 197 pounds. He is a guy that excels in man coverage. He can flip his hips. He can run downfield. Very smooth. And when you watch these guys run, you can see how smooth they are, and sometimes you don't think they're going to run as fast. Here's this hip turn thing that I thought was excellent as he turned, and then let's go see if he goes and tracks the ball. Excellent job high pointing the ball and get it upfield and accelerate. So this is another kid who hasn't been mentioned much in the first round, maybe a afterthought here or there, but I think he put himself on the map this week.
Yeah, he's a first-round guy for me all day long. And also, interestingly, and you watched his teammate as well on the other side, Jacorian Bennett. He ran to the 4.3s as well at Maryland. And I'll just ask you this. Why was that defense not better? You have guys like that dominating. They have some guys who get drafted. Is that something you think about, or that's not?
No, all I'm concerned about, let the Coach Locks and them worry about the defense. All I want to do is see these guys, how athletic they are, and can they cover, and all these guys can. And Maryland has 2 really, really, really good corners.
Yeah, another guy who was really good. Again, we spoke with him yesterday, and he showed up with an edge, and when he was done, I was ready to fight you for who loved him more, Julius Juju Brents.
You can have him.
Okay, I'll take him. I appreciate it. That's a win for me, no doubt about it. And he ended up measuring. He ran 6'2.5". He looked taller than 6'2.5" in person, maybe because he was so.
Well, you're horrible at estimates.
This is true. He was 198, 34-inch arms, and more importantly, perhaps he ran a 4.53. I think that's plenty fast, unofficial, for a guy that size who plays with that physicality. And I never saw on tape him getting beat downfield.
Yeah, well, you should have watched the TCU game.
That game,
first game.
But okay, what? It was against Quentin Johnson. Go ahead, tell me about him.
Yeah, this kid is surprisingly athletic, and he has He's a big corner, but he has little man corner skills. You can see his movement. I thought he was very smooth through these drills tonight. He also caught the ball very well, but you can see this guy can drop his weight and get into and out of his cuts.
So, again, and he draws comparisons, unfairly or not, to Tariq Woolen, from UTSA last year.
What did you say Tariq ran?
He ran in the 4.2s.
Okay,
so,
this is 4.5, so it's a little different cat.
But he was a converted wide receiver. There were concerns about, not concerns, but he didn't have the experience to play potentially as a top 50 pick or whatever in terms of starting right away. Cornerback, turns out a lot of people outside of Seattle were wrong. Julius Brents, I'm taking him on day 2 and not thinking twice about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Another guy that's going to go on day 2, and Rick's prayers were answered because this young man, admittedly, and you actually said as much, he had a tough Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
He got better as the week went along.
He got better, and guys have tough Senior Bowls. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world for your NFL career. He had a lot of good tape at Cal. This is safety Daniel Scott, and he ran a 4.45 40. He at times looked a little slow, but that could at the Senior Bowl, and that could be for any number of reasons. But he came out here and had a good afternoon.
Yeah, and when you watch him on tape, this is a tough physical safety. He can play down in the box. I think when a player runs this type of speed, then you're going to not be as concerned if he has to play in the deep half of the field. And I think this kid is a smart, intelligent football player. That's one of the critical factors you're looking for at safety. And when you combine that size with that speed, I think he's going to shoot up the draft boards as well.
Before the Senior Bowl, he was one of my top safeties. I got a little nervous at the Senior Bowl, and now, luckily,
just trust me. Just go along
luckily,
with the flow.
I trusted Rick, and he got one right, as Pete Prisco might say. All right, let's go to the other side, guys, whose stock maybe fell a little bit, took a hit. Not the end of the world. They still have their pro days and all the tape to lean back on, but either way, we need to talk about them. Another young man we spoke with yesterday, A.J. Anthony Johnson out of UVA, big cornerback. He's measured in at 6'2", ran at 4.64. He was 205, 32 and 5/8 arms, which is plenty long, I'd imagine, for the cornerback position. But the 4.64 is what sticks out. And my immediate question, and I talked to scouts in the fall, so we're worried about how fast he is. Are you immediately saying, okay, he should move
Did
inside?
you stay on his bandwagon after they talked about him like that?
Yeah, because he had a good Senior Bowl. I thought he did pretty well, better in the game than some of the practices. But that's not that's not unexpected necessarily. But when you see the 4.6. Do you think maybe safety might be in the future?
Yeah, now all of a sudden there's going to be some safety talk because I agree with you that he is physical. He's better in press than he is in off coverage. He flipped his hips. He did a pretty good job staying with those receivers down at the Senior Bowl, although the top receivers weren't down there. Many of the top receivers weren't. But this kid was a good football player. But when you run a 4.64, you really got to question, can this guy line up against NFL caliber receivers at the next level?
And that's a fair question. He's a great young man, a great teammate, but at the end of the day, the 6 after the 4 is what troubles you.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would have invited him to our set, but again, I deferred to you because he's one of your pet cats.
Yeah, and I'm glad I got a chance to talk with him. So that makes me feel better. Here's a name. Look, he's not a combine faller, but I wanted to put him on here because your guy and my guy, our safety one, Brian Branch, he ran a 4.58 unofficially.
Yeah.
Everything else is fine. He's incredibly quick. We talked to him yesterday, and clearly Nick Saban trusts that young man because he was on the field every healthy snap. Does the 4.58 as a slot receiver concern you at all?
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a concern.
Okay.
But he's quicker than he is fast. He has excellent instincts and vision. He's quick to react what he sees happening in front of him. But with that 4.58, teams might start to look at him more as a safety than a nickel corner, although he does bring some versatility to the defense. But that 4.58 will be some concern for some teams.
Still safety one, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Scott did himself some favors. I don't think Brian Branch hurt himself necessarily.
And I don't know, and just to be honest, I don't think this is a great safety class
I agree.
overall.
No, I agree with that. Speaking of which, let's talk about Jay Ward, who plays in the defensive back for LSU. He ran a 4.55, and again, when you're playing that position with the requirements that are on there, and he played a lot in the slot as well, what does that say to you? Because he's not as big as Brian Branch either.
Right, and he was a good football player. When
Absolutely.
you watch him on tape, he's a guy, one of those combinations guys. He's going to play as a nick over the third receiver or the slot receiver. Is he going to be a free safety? So, again, these guys that ran into 4.5s, you want your nick corners to be quick. So what teams will do will start looking at all the shuttles, all the jumps, and see how explosive they are. But the one thing that teams will get worried about, if they're quick, They can cover underneath stuff because they can mirror the receivers in their routes. Where the issue comes if the slot receiver or whoever they're on stretches them vertically down the field,
Right.
do they have enough speed to stay on the hip of the receiver?
And when I said he's smaller than Branch, he weighed 2 pounds less, 190 versus 188. He was an inch taller. So there's a trade-off there. Let's do one more before we go to break so we can get to our guy, Danny Cannell. And I'll give you your choice. Do you want to do Caillou Blue Kelly, Christopher Smith, or Jamie Robinson as your last guy?
You know, the guy that I thought was one heck of a football player and had a great year was Christopher Smith.
Yeah.
He's small, but he's very instinctive. He's always in position to make plays, but he was 5'10", 192, which is a concern. So you want to see a smaller, free safety type guy like he is faster. And he plays faster than this, but the 4.66, that's going to kill him. 4.66 is tough to play in the league as a defensive back. So I imagine a guy that may have snuck into day 2 is definitely going to be a day 3 guy, and he may fall farther.
And potentially a bargain, but again, 4.66, that's the point where you might get concerned.
One thing that I want to point out that you have to be conscientious of is this doesn't determine what type of football player these guys are. He didn't run well, but he's one heck of a football player, and guys like that know how to play the game end up making it and being an impact type player.
All right, Rick, I actually learned something. We've been here a week. I learned something from our guy, Rick Spielman, our general manager. When we come back, it's going to be our quarterback, Danny Cannell. We're going to preview the quarterbacks. They're going to be here tomorrow, working out, that is, and he'll tell you which quarterback should have the most to worry about going into the workouts tomorrow. We'll be right back after this.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.